All right, welcome everybody to the Comics Aficionados. I'm your host, Wes. With me right now is Pele and Dylan from the Real Comic Book Gamer. Pele, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I just woke up a few minutes ago, but I'm sharp as a tack.
Nice. Yeah, I think everybody's just waking up.
My
So
coffee's
how you
brewing,
doing today,
so
Dylan?
I'm doing good. That's the best time to do stream. Everyone's, first wakes up, you get everyone's honest opinions,
fucking
right.
thing.
And with us for the first time on the channel, Master Chitty. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad to have you. Your volume's a little low. I don't know if you can turn it up.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that F-bomb a minute ago. My cat jumped up in my lap.
Oh.
Dug his claws right into that meaty section right there in your thigh.
Yeah, my cat does that all the time. And then when he fails the jump,
What are you doing?
Wow. Everyone wants to hear about Pele's meaty thighs.
They are extra meaty.
All right.
Not, but
So we have a couple more guests that are going to be joining us, but we were already a little bit late, so we're just going to get right into it. Of course, today we're going to talk about Tom King and Brian Michael Bendis at DC Comics. Who's done more damage? I've been wanting to talk about it all week. Event Leviathan put me over the edge. Batman 82 got me going, and let's get her started. So Tom King's Batman and Brian Michael Bendis' Superman are two of the most divisive, controversial runs for either character. King's Batman is highlighted by the wedding fake-out, Batman being portrayed as an incompetent loser, and the pointless death of Alfred. Bendis' Superman has its own unique faults. He's turned Superman to a terrible husband and father, aged up Jonathan Kent, and features the slowest story progression I've ever read in a comic. So let's get the games going. Dylan, in your opinion, who's done more damage to one of DC's marquee characters, King to Batman or Bendis to Superman?
So it's a neck and neck race. And I guess if you want to say the world, I feel like you could say King did more to the surrounding characters of Batman than Bendis did to the surrounding characters of Superman. But to the core character of like Superman or Batman, I'd say Bendis did more to Superman. Because at least with King, there's an escape. You have Detective Comics, which is a great book right now from Tomasi, to where there's no escape from Bendis. He has complete creative control of everything going on with Superman right now. He has Superman but Justice League right now is not very Superman focused at all. The Sixth Dimension arc but right now
they changed that. They changed that up.
Yeah, so now it's just you have Action Comics and Superman, which is all just Bendis doing whatever he wants, and it's just terrible. And he aged up Jonathan Kent purely so he could throw him into the Legion of Superheroes. He went and he killed off the bald city of Kandor. He's made Superman get cucked he made Clark get cucked by Superman, which was just odd. And now he's going to be exposing a secret identity, which was something they did 4 years ago with Superman Truth. And it seems he's doing everything he can to ruin the character. So I'd go with Bendis has done. It's very close, but I'd say Bendis has done worse right now. It's just been so bad, and it feels like you're being suffocated as a Superman fan because there's just no escape besides canceling the book on your poll like I did. That's the only escape I could find. It's just he doesn't understand the character. It's Bendis speak all the way, and like you said, the progression of the story, there is none. It's just like Leviathan, which felt like it never went anywhere. That's the entirety of his run on Superman. You have an Action Comics, you have like Oprah Winfrey is basically a mob boss in Metropolis, and no one cares. And then in Superman, you have this new villain called Ragal Zar, which also no one cares about. And it took like 30 issues to finally be like, hey, Ragal Zar did what we said he did from the very beginning. Surprise. It's just, it's been terrible. I feel like Bendis has done more damage, but it's very close. Like if someone said King, I wouldn't necessarily disagree.
That's a good breakdown. It really is. Yeah. I would have said King simply because of the fact that I follow Batman more than I follow Superman. Especially the death of Alfred. No reason whatsoever. Absolutely pointless. He did it just for the clout to say that, I'm the writer that killed Alfred.
Yeah.
Look at me. I have big balls. What? You know, what the hell, man? It doesn't take big balls to kill an 88-year-old man. You know, it takes more to actually listen to him and hear what he has to say. You know, but you know, it's just, and he seems like one of those people that is the type that, you know, old people are useless anyway. You know, that's the way I've always kind of suspected Tom King is like. But doesn't listen to anyone but his voices in his own head. So it's very, anyway, whoever was next, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it's Bendis. It's not even a close thing for me. It's Bendis. You know, I was one of those who, you know, read, you know, I guess his first introductory miniseries into his Superman run, where, you know, the first few issues, I was like, oh yeah, he's doing a good job, until, you know, everything that ensued in his main Superman run followed.
Yep.
I was a huge fan of Gleason and Tomasi taking over Superman. Really like the family aspect, like his interaction with John, going with him on missions and stuff like that. Aging up John was a very low blow to me. I was very angry about that, simply because once again, Tomasi with Jorge Jimenez did a great job on Super Sons. I thought that was one of DC's best titles when it was running. And it was clear that when they brought it back for a maxi issue, they didn't lose the magic at all. And now that John is with the Legion of Superheroes, which I was kind of iffy about having to return anyway, you know, there's no point. I don't know what he's going to do in like the 31st century, other than I'm filling in for what my dad used to do decades ago when he was part of the Legion of Superheroes and the whole timeline thing. You know, in addition, I read the first issue of Leviathan, and I didn't know what Bendis wanted to do, so it's kind of directionless for me. I don't know where he wants to go with the character of Superman. I don't think that, you know, revealing his identity is going to do much for the character, because from what I heard, people hated it 4 years ago. I don't know why he tried again. As for Tom King, though, you see, yeah, what he's done with Batman is egregious, and it's funny that whenever you see Batman in another book like Red Hood and the Outlaws, or Batman and the Outsiders, or Detective Comics, he seems to be written loads better by the writers in those books. But the reason why I say Bendis has done more of a disservice, at least to his character, than Tom King, is that at least Tom King in the past has had some credibility. Like the second annual Batman has been basically when he grew old with Selina, people thought, oh my gosh, that was like a fantastic annual book by Tom King. Tom King can write, so at least he has that pedigree. But, you know, Bendis
Bendis' Daredevil. Bendis' Daredevil is one of the best Daredevil runs in history.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, and you know,
I'm just repeating that because that's what everybody says. Personally, I think it's dog sugar, but it you know, that's what everybody claims anyway.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, and you know, I'm not saying that Bendis can't write, because I think he can write, but you know, the fact that DC has been giving him almost universal power, because I checked the solicitations. And then he's got even more books in February, which I don't get. So I don't know what he wants to alter, but yeah, Tom King's descent has been slow and sad, while, you know, Bendis has just been sharp, and I'm just going to change the whole aspect of it. So that's why I chose Bendis.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Dylan. My bad.
I was gonna say I agree with that. That King has had some good issues of Batman, while the majority has been bad. There are some good issues you can point to where outside the Man of Steel miniseries, every single issue of Superman in Action Comics has been bad for Bendis. Like, you can't point to a single issue that's like, oh, that one was good. To where with King, as much as it's been really bad lately, there's like you can pick and choose some where it's like, oh, that one's a good issue. You can't do that with Bendis. His Superman Action Comics is like all of it's been terrible.
All right, Ash. I know you're champing at the bit to get in here. Who's worse, King's Batman or Bendis' Superman?
Oh boy. Are we asking who's just worse or who's done
more damage to the character?
Is that me? That's not me. Someone's got a lot of feedback.
It's Ash. I mean, not Ash. It's Dylan,
This is-
because I can see his levels.
It's not me. My level's not moving when that's happening.
Sorry, I didn't mean
It's,
to
no
derail the
avatar.
show, but I got headphones on and it was really loud. The answer to the question is, for me, it's without a doubt, hands down, Brian Michael Bendis. And the reason for that, I would say, is purely because Bendis has got his hands on more characters. If we're talking just Superman, however, I still would pick Bendis because right from the get-go, he started destroying Superman. And I would say, even though Batman is the more popular, it's the more cool character to say, Superman is the flagship of DC. It's sort of the, it's the masthead. And I know some people are going to disagree, and that's fine. And I do recognize, like I said, that Batman is the more cool. It's the
better selling character.
It's definitely the better selling. It's it's equivalent to me when, back in the days when X-Men was the big dog of Marvel, but Spider-Man was still the face of the company. Anyways, not to get off topic on there, King started off really well on Batman, and I'm doing a series right now that I'm a little behind on. Where I'm doing a retrospective, or I'm just going back and I'm reading King's book from the get-go, and trying to just see where it all went wrong. Tracking. Was it all bad? Was there clues in the beginning that we just didn't see? Because sometimes that's the case too, where sometimes a new writer will come on and they're doing things and you don't realize it right away because you're just kind of like, hey, this is new and fresh, and then maybe you go back after all the damage is done and you go, oh, it was here all along and I didn't see it. So I'm kind of exploring that a little bit.
Hey, I want to ask you about this. I think within his first 2 or 3 story arcs, didn't he have Bruce Wayne have a suicide attempt when he was 10 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was really kind of weird. And I covered that actually. And that was sort of like one of those things where you talk about where like at the time, you're just like, okay, well, the book's not bad. This is really off, but I guess I'll kind of overlook it. But you go back and look at it through your eyes now of what Tom King's doing, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I see this all along? It's so obvious now.
It's kind of, he's done that in 3 different books now. He's had Bruce Wayne try to commit suicide as a kid, I believe. Mr. Miracle tried to commit suicide as a kid, and then he actually has Hal Jordan kill himself in an issue of Batman, correct?
Yeah, in the alternate future.
Mm-hmm.
I think King just wants to kill himself.
Well, come on, man. We don't know that. But he keeps putting it into his book.
I said, I think.
So, Brian Michael Bendis, on the other hand, he came out from the get-go, right from the gun, and with Man of Steel, and just basically said, this character will not, I'm going to destroy him. And the clues were right there from the beginning, where Superman, in Man of Steel, the book's called Man of Steel, Supergirl saves the day. Superman has taken a back seat in every single story, from Man of Steel to Action Comics to Superman to now this most recent Leviathan fiasco. Superman has been completely and utterly impotent. There is not one instance where he has been the hero of his own book. And this is in my personal opinion, by design. This cannot be unintentional. And now that we see this 5G thing coming along in the future, where Superman's going to be replaced by his son, it becomes even more obvious that Brian Michael Bendis clearly does not love Superman. At least does not like the Superman that we all know and love. Maybe he's got some twisted vision of Superman in his head that's different than everyone, and he's like, that's the Superman I like. I'm going to make it like that. I can't speak for him, but everything he does, he destroys. He has to put his mark. I've used the analogy of like a dog. You're walking your dog down the street and they have to pee on every fire hydrant and mark their territory. Bendis is the same way when it comes to comics. He takes everything, and he has to change it and put his mark on it, down to moving the Fortress of Solitude. Nope, it's not good enough to leave it where it is. I got to put my mark on it. Now the Fortress of Solitude is in the middle of Bermuda Triangle. Why? Because I'm Bendis.
It's like this crazy because it's one of the most traversed areas in the world
Yes.
as far as shipping traffic.
Yes.
It's like everyone would try into it.
Exactly. I made that comment too. I was like, this is so stupid. And he's done the thing to break up Superman and Lois's wedding, or not their wedding. I'm sorry, their marriage. And I know in the comic books it's still kind of it's really they're still married. Ash, okay, yes, but they're not married the way that they were. They were a cohesive, down home kind of family, in an homage to the old Kents, that raised Superman. And now they're this weird metrosexual sort of urban family where their kid is sort of just out of the house. Like, oh, we got a 10-year-old. What should we do? Oh, let's send him off into space. I mean, we both got careers, so we don't have time to be raising a kid anymore. So we'll send him off with kooky grandpa across the end of the universe. And then he'll come back and he'll be 7 years older. And we won't care what we missed most of his life. And then we'll just send him off into the future again, because again, we don't have time for kids. The nuclear family can't exist in postmodern comics. And which is really strange when I think about the big picture and trying to see what Tom King is doing with Batman, where he's essentially trying to do the opposite and take Batman and say, no, he's not going to be the lone figure of the night anymore. He's going to settle down and marry and, sit in front of the fireplace with his dog and his wife and raise his son. I don't know what his plans are, but I'm sure it won't end up that way, but it just seems so weird what they're doing. Bendis, furthermore, can't tell a story. We now have equal number of Bendis Superman comics to Tom King comics, or really close, because he's writing 2 books where King's only writing 1. And Bendis has yet, I defy you to show me where there's a plot anywhere. It's just random nonsense that he just scribbles out, and it's all just dialogue. You just see characters talking all the time, just talk. And when there is action and things happening, it's just random, chaotic, for the sake of, oh, I think there should be a fight now. Oh, the big Rogol Zar story that I came in and when Dylan was talking about, it just rounded up with the fact that, oh, look, the Star Police show up and arrest everybody, like it was some riot or something. Everyone gets arrested, including Rogol Zar. They let Superman go on good behavior because, hey, he's Superman. And the end, we got Rogol Zar. You're like, what? 30 issues of Superman, and that's how you wrap it up? That was how. There's no plot. And when we look at Young Justice, when we look at Legion of Super Doofuses that are, I don't know what he's doing over there. It's every single thing he's doing. He's taking from the core that we fans know and love, and he's going, nope, this is not what you guys like. Let me reshape it my Bendis way and make it my way. And then you can have that product. And isn't that better? And for us old comic fans, we're screaming no. And the only people who are grasping onto it are newbies that don't really understand comics, and they pick it up and it goes, oh, this sounds like an episode of Friends or Big Bang Theory. Haha, it's funny. I kind of like it. They're all kooky characters. And they don't know any better. They don't understand comics. And for them, it's just a sort of a passing little fad. And they don't see the damage that's being done. Tom King, and I'll wrap this up in a sec. Tom King, seriously, I believe, is trying. I don't think Tom King is, well, maybe he's not anymore, but he was in the beginning. It was clear that he was trying to tell this big magnum opus of a Batman story, and that was going to culminate with his relationship with a Catwoman that's been in the works forever, and it just went off the rails and became this weird psychoanalysis thing that some people started, cluing into. Maybe this is a key into his own personal psyche. I don't know. And I just think that at the end of the day, we still have Detective Comics. We still have what Snyder's doing with his Batman stuff. We still have the new Batman Superman by Josh Williamson that features Batman in a really good light. And Batman fans, yes, we're stuck with the Alfred's dead thing, but characters have died before. Let's not forget, Jason Todd's been dead, Damien's been dead. It sucks what happened with Alfred, but it's not undoable. You can write out of that. You can't really write out of, or not very easily, what Bendis is doing with Superman, because he's changing everything. And it almost just needs smacks of being like a complete crisis reset for him. And I'll wrap it up there.
Well, I think that's probably what we're going to end up getting, though.
I want to say thank you to everyone that's in the chats right now. Lively conversation right now. If you haven't given a thumbs up to the video, please do that right now. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And if you want to help support the channel, super chats are available. And if you want to donate to our coffee page, that is in the description below. Pele, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, I think that's what we're going to end up having anyway. After now that clicking is back, I don't know what that is, but I think we're going to end up with a reset anyway after this, after their Marvel Now excursion that they're going to be going on. That DC is going to see that the sales are awful. They're going to see that this wasn't very well received, and they're going to reset, and we're going to get a final crisis type of situation. But it's oh God, if I had to choose, I like Dylan's answer as far as fundamental core changes in Superman. Yeah, but you have to understand, King made Batman into a crazy person. I mean, legit insane. Giving him, this backstory of mental illness, and the guy who we've always thought is the most mentally fortified and most stable of all superheroes in the DC universe is now a unhinged maniac who is barely holding on by a thread. That, my God, it's absolutely unbelievable what he's been allowed to do. And I mean, the wholesale destruction of characters that have been around for decades and decades. I mean, Captain Atom is done. He's not coming back. I don't even think he'd come back with a reset now. It's insane. I mean, he did what he did specifically to that character. Is you have to understand that's a creation by Kirby. This is an important character that was that was one of the flag. He was one of the tent poles for DC for a while there. That he didn't just kill him, he emasculated him, and then made him out to be such a laughingstock and such a defeated, pathetic excuse for a hero that the guy is too scared to even go out in public now.
He's on the hospital bed crying.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that girl. Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. It's just. But I do have to go back to what my dad said. Right when he quit collecting the title. It's the first. I mean, my God, my dad bought and collected Superman since issue 256. He's this is a hardcore dude. Actually, I think it's longer than that. It's ever since 1963 he'd been buying, issues of Superman, and unbroken every month, unbroken. And he's like, I don't recognize the character now. He goes, even in the times when everything was weird or just crazy, or there was the different change as far as the character is concerned going forward. He goes, I don't recognize the character now. He says, it seems like they're just trying to destroy masculinity. And I think that's what it is, because Superman is a sign of masculinity, of a strong, heroic, virile man, and Bendis hates that as well. As most of his ilk do, and he wants to destroy that part because he feels that it's necessary for, you know, his agenda. And it's really, really sad. Really sad. And I don't know what that sound is. That is driving me crazy.
I don't know. Somebody back.
I don't know what's going on. It's gotta do something. Yeah, I think that was Chitty, Master Chitty.
Yeah.
Okay, you hear me?
So, Dylan, you know, you're the world's biggest Superman fan. Have you thought about just giving up the titles? Is Bendis put it that far for you?
I already did.
Yeah.
I canceled my pull. It's just, you know, it takes a little bit until I stop getting the issues because my shop already ordered the issues for me. But I did already cancel my pull because I said before that, okay, I'm going to wait and see what happened with Ragal Zar. And then if the book is still terrible, I'm going to cancel it. And I saw it happen with Ragal Zar. And Ragal Zar came into the book proclaiming that he was like behind the destruction of Krypton and some other things. And we didn't know if any of that was true or what actually happened. And then it was revealed that basically everything he said was true, and there was no real variation or spin on it at the end. So it was kind of a waste of like 30 issues just finding out that everything he said was true. The thing that really also stings about Bendis taking over is we had like a nice renaissance for Superman with Rebirth, where you had Tomasi and Gleason on Superman, and then you had Jurgens on Action Comics. It was such a great era for Superman, and it was a new era with Jonathan Kent. You had this whole Superman family, and it was so good. And then Bendis comes in and wrecks it, and it's so bad now. Like the turn from this great era we had of Superman to the Bendis era is awful. So many people loved what was going on. Even people that didn't necessarily care for Superman that much were brought in by what Tomasi and Jurgens and Gleason were doing, to where Bendis is doing the opposite. No one cares about reading Superman now. I don't hear anyone talking about Superman in an exciting way. It's not bringing in new readers. It's driving out old readers, myself included. It's terrible what he's done to Superman.
So, do you have an opinion on who has a worse storycraft right now? Because Bendis' stories are so meandering that every character sounds exactly the same.
No.
They're so boring. They never go anywhere. But King has some really weird stuff. Is always throwing in like classic literature and poetry, and it doesn't feel right. It's really pretentious. And then he like jumps around with no rhyme or reason. Like when City of Bane started, there's still no explanation how Bane took over. He's just in charge now, and like he's got to control the city. You know, do you think one of them is actually like a worse writer right now, whose craft is worse?
Yeah, I think Bendis is worse, well worse at that. At least you can see an attempt from King. Like I can see that while King's doing terrible, it seems like he's trying to write his story. To where Bendis, I have no clue what he's trying to do. I have no idea what Bendis is trying to do with Superman. It just seems like he has no long-term plan. While King's long-term plan sucks, at least he has one. I don't think Bendis has one. He kind of just wings it and is like, I'll just do what I always do, and just keeps going. It's like, oh, Jonathan Kent's Legion of Superheroes, like all this other random stuff. And it doesn't seem like he really has a plan, to where as bad as King has been, at least he has some type of a plan that he's trying to go with. And again, there are those moments with King that are decent. To where with Bendis, ever since after the Man of Steel miniseries, there hasn't been like any decent moments. It's been just awful. I don't think Bendis is a good writer at all anymore. Like we're talking about, his Daredevil was good. He's had some good stuff, but at the end of the day, like he hasn't been good in a long time, which really makes DC picking it up that much more confusing. But yeah, I'd say King has a bit, but like the edge on him there in terms of storycraft.
So, Judy, like the way I explain it as I think Tom King is experimenting right now and failing, whereas I think Brian Bendis just can't write anymore. He's writing these enormous graphic novels and releasing them in 20-page increments, so they're not serialized stories or anything, so it doesn't flow correctly. Is that kind of the feel or the vibe that you get from his stories?
Yeah. So, personally, I think another thing that people might have overlooked is that I think that Tom King is using Superman to promote his other pet characters, like Naomi. Like when I saw Naomi on like plastered on Action Comics, I was like, she has her own book. I don't know. And this is the same thing that he kind of, well, he didn't necessarily do it when he was in Marvel, but it's because Riri Williams was essentially Iron Man in an Iron Man book, and this is Riri Williams with the name Iron Man, which she wasn't. And now you replace, and this time I guess it's more egregious with Bendis, putting Naomi, front and center. Like, I'm going to write Superman to give my other character shine within his own book. Now, Tom King, when I read like the first 6-7 issues of Mr. Miracle, he was like, oh man, it's like Tom King did his research into like, let me do an alternate take on the New Gods and let's see what happens when Orion is like really bad. This time he's taken over. All Father is gone. Mr. Miracles is in this existential crisis, which I thought he wrote well for the first 3 to 4 issues. I thought that he really understood Mr. Miracle, and then it kind of, got on the rails because I'm not sure whether he knew how to bring it all home together and, have a solid issue, right? Not solid issue, solid like, good mini maxi series right there. So sometimes I think Tom King gets in the way of his own writing, which kind of reduces, the quality that he does have. People talk about the issues where Joshua Williamson and Tom King kind of teamed up, where you had Batman and Flash. In that series, you got the Riddles of War of Riddles and Jokes, which people thought were not necessarily fantastic, but it was a very good arc. And I think Tom King's problem is like, I don't know how to build up to an event, which is like how you mentioned, we don't know how Bane like took over Gotham. Like, oh well, let's have Bane because I haven't used Bane in a long time, and nobody's really seen Bane, have some shine recently, and that's not a bad thing. But give us some exposition of how Bane took over, why Bane is, why Bane has like power in Gotham now, and then the way that you end him is very anticlimactic when you have Catwoman basically, help Bruce defeat Bane. Even though I'm a child of the Batman animated series, so I've seen Batman take on Bane quite a number of times, so it's possible to write Batman taking down Bane. But yeah, I think that King's writing gets in the way of his he gets in the own way of like writing a good story, and I don't know whether that's intentional or unintentional. Probably unintentional, but it's a detriment to what could be good stories from Tom King. But Bendis, I don't think anything of his is unintentional. I think he's being purposely, slanderous to Superman, which is kind of sad because when I got back into comics 2 years ago, and I was reading the Superman from Gleason and Tomasi and Jurgens, I was like, oh, yeah, this is Superman I remember watching in the animated series, something that I could enjoy when I enjoyed when I was a kid. And, I like this. And then Bendis came.
Mm-hmm. So I want to welcome to the channel SSJ Gohan, or Future Gohan. What's going on, brother?
Not much. What's going on, guys?
Not too much. How do you want me to address you? You want to be just called Gohan? What do you want?
Oh, my name's Josh, so you can just call me Josh. That's fine.
All right, Josh. That's a lot easier to remember. So we're ending on our first segment where we're talking about Tom King's Batman versus Brian Michael Bendis' Superman. Which one has done more long-term damage to the character? What do you say?
Oh man, I think Batman can always be fixed pretty easily. If you put a good writer on him, he can be fixed pretty quickly. Superman has had permanent damage done to his family, not just him. What they've done with John is disgusting. They ruined Super Sons. They've ruined the marriage. I think it would take years to fix the damage that they've done to Superman at this point with Bendis. I think James Tynion can actually fix Batman if they would give him a good 50, 60 issue run on it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Bendis has done the most damage to DC Comics, not just to Superman, but to DC Comics as a whole. I think Bendis has just came in and just... He's a cancer. That's the way I describe it. I don't like using that word, but he just came in and it completely infected the company. Like within a year of him coming in, my DC pull list went from 20 books down to like 5, and most of those are Black Label titles at this point.
Dang.
I'm in the same exact boat. So, is there anything specific like you want to talk about for King or Bendis before we move on to their work on their event books?
Yeah. I mean, my main question is, I want to know what the hell happened to Tom King, because his first 40 issues of Batman were actually really good. I really liked I Am Gotham and I Am Bane. I thought both of them were really good. It might have been Dave Finch's artwork, but I thought both of those were really good. War of Jokes and Riddles I thought was kind of lackluster, but I really liked a lot of his run. And then it just seemed like as soon as the wedding stuff started, it just went to crap. And if I remember right, I mean, I'm in grad school now, so my memory on comics is a little rusty. I don't have a lot of time to read right now. But if I remember, the wedding took place the same summer as when Bendis came on. So yep. I'm kind of like, there's a lot to it, because it's obvious that, and I don't want to digress, but it's obvious that when Geoff Johns left his creative post and Dan Didio took over, there was a big change in DC, and it's just weird that you can see all this shift happening around that time. Like, you see the wedding come up, that was an absolute disaster, and then Bendis comes on, just ruins the Superman family, ruins the titles. I think a lot of it, what I just want to know is what happened to Tom King. Like, where's the Tom King that was writing those first 40 issues of Batman? That's.
I think a lot of it has to do with he got his editor fired because he didn't like him.
Is that it?
His own editor. I also think that he doesn't like criticism, and when he got the criticism for the wedding, for all the build up and then the execution of it, like he wanted to double and triple down and be like, I'll show you, I'm the best writer in the world. And it turned out that you're not the best writer in the world. Like you should listen to your audience. I think that has a lot to do with it. That's just one of my theories.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't like criticism. He's one of the people that will double down on it just to spite the fans, which makes no sense to me. And that's why your sales have dropped off by, your copy ship dropped off by 20,000 over the past couple months.
Yeah, I mean, it went from about 115, it dropped all the way down to 75-ish, and then kind of got a bump from City of Bane.
Yeah, it was about 75, 76 at its lowest, and then City of Bane brought it back up a little bit. But, I mean, you see the same with Superman, which just, that it's crazy to me that Superman ships, and remember, these are copies shipped, they're not copies sold. So the copies sold are probably 10,000 lower than the copies shipped. You see Superman putting in less copies shipped now than when he was shipping twice monthly with both books. Like,
exactly.
They're shipping it once a month now with Action and Superman. You're getting about between 30 to 50,000, 50 on the high end, 30 on the low. You were doing numbers like that when Tomasi and Jurgens were shipping it twice a month. Like,
and you had Super Sons.
Yeah, and you had Super Sons too. The whole thing just, it makes me want to bounce my head off a wall. I just don't get any of it. It's crazy.
So, does anyone have anything last thing to say about the Batman versus Superman debate before we move on to their events? All right, moving on to the events. So, both King and Bendis had event books in 2019. Uh-oh.
I have no idea.
Both King and Bendis had event books in 2019. Tom King's Heroes in Crisis is beautifully illustrated, but features one of the ugliest stories I've personally ever read. He basically assassinated the symbol of hope in DC Comics Rebirth, Wally West. Brian Michael Bendis' event Leviathan might not be as controversial for the subject matter, but it's one of the most pointless event books in recent memory. Basically taking 6 issues of Action Comics, a 80-page $10 comic, and a 6-part miniseries to reveal Leviathan's identity. Ash, both event series are very bad in their own unique way. Which is worst, Heroes in Crisis or Event Leviathan?
Heroes in Crisis is the worst miniseries I've ever read in my life of comics, bar none. And it was really weird because it started off, that issue 1 was the best. At the time, I said this is the best issue of the year. That issue 1 started off fantastic, and then it just went into a black hole of something I can't understand. Event Leviathan also started off pretty good in my opinion. I know that's more controversial, but I think the reason why Event Leviathan I don't say is worse is because it was just like you said, it was just pointless. It was just smoke and it wasn't even smoke and mirrors. It was just a cup of room temperature water. It just it didn't matter. I drank it. Okay, I got something. I don't remember. I don't care. Whereas Tom King's Heroes in Crisis, first of all, you had arguably maybe the best artist in comics right now, Clay Mann. Like you've got the tools. Like there's no excuse at this point. You've got the guy who can deliver everything you want, and you turn into the story that not only was terrible. I mean, man, there were issues of that. Man, everyone remembers the poetry issue where I forget the name of the character. Forgive me, the caveman guy who's like sitting on the back of his woolly mammoth or something, reciting Kate's or something. It was just like, what is this? It was postmodernist, pretentious tripe. It was King trying to be like, look at how sophisticated I am, and completely not being so. Bendis, on the other hand, was just like, hey, look, I'm revealing something. Ta-da! No one cares. And we just all moved on. We're like, oh, whatever. But King actually made us mad. And not mad in a good way, where something really serious happened and it made us mad, but it was a dramatic thing that was kind of forever be important to the character. And we're going to look back on it, like maybe when Jason Todd died or something, where we're just like, oh, damn, but it's a good story. Like it's mad in the sense of like, you just destroyed this character for no reason. A character that was beloved by everyone and it didn't serve a purpose. It just so you could say you did it. And you could tell this moronic story about heroes needing to talk to someone about their PTSD that they shouldn't have because they're fictional gods. And then the whole the plot line was something about like, well, Wally is actually kind of a hero because he was trying to release this information to the world. He was trying to be the Julian Assange of superheroes or something. It didn't come across right at all. King took far too many issues. That story should have been a 5-issue miniseries. It was 9. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm stating all the obvious that everyone in the audience just already knows and nods their head and goes, yep, that's exactly what we all saw. But that's my opinion.
So you wanted to talk about it, Josh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a reason. There was a reason behind what happened, and it was to destroy Wally West. I know it's not part of the King and Bendis discussion, but I still think Dan DiDio and Jim Lee, both of them are key figures in all of what's going on with these two writers specifically. And I think that Tom King was ordered by the people above him, which would be Dan DiDio, to destroy Wally West. It just makes no sense because Wally was absent through the New 52, and that was probably one of the biggest complaints that readers had about the New 52 is where's Wally? And Rebirth brings him back under Geoff Johns. Everybody loves it. As soon as he leaves and New Power takes over, we see Wally West. Honestly, I didn't read Heroes in Crisis all the way through. I read most of it, but honestly, I think what they did to Wally in that was worse than death. I think I would have rather have seen Wally die than them bastardize him like that and turn him into a murderer like they did. It was absolutely ridiculous. And the same thing with Dick Grayson that Tom King did in his Batman run. I think those orders came from people higher up, and they weren't decisions that King made himself. But yeah, I agree with everything that. I don't know everybody in here yet by name. I'm sorry, but I agree with everything the guy before me said. But I still, there was definitely a reason behind what happened to Wally. They wanted him ripped apart and gone. I mean, we're starting to see him brought back a little bit with Flash Forward by Scott Lobdell, which I thought was going to be a mess, but it's actually been really good. But yeah, there was reasons behind what happened. They wanted Wally West ripped apart. They've ripped everything apart with the hope of DC Comics. We've seen Dick Grayson ripped apart. We've seen Wally West ripped apart. The Titans were ripped apart through them. It's the hope of the universe has just been torn out again, just like it was in the New 52.
So, Paley, what was the reaction, to Heroes in Crisis versus Event Leviathan? Was it
God,
more visceral, or what was it?
Well, Heroes in Crisis started out really well. Sales were amazing. Event Leviathan never had amazing sales. No one really reacted with any kind of excitement. It was just, what is this crap? I'm not reading this. When's it over? It's kind of like what Ash said. It's kind of like, it's a bucket of warm piss. It's not really anything that you really want to enjoy. It just sort of sits there. I guess if you wanted to be grossed out, you could, put your foot in it and, it'd warm your foot up a little bit. But, it doesn't really have any purpose. Whereas you've got, you got Heroes in Crisis, which destroyed several characters, not just Wally West. I mean, look at poor Booster, my God.
Or the Trinity getting owned by like one person without power.
Then you had Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman just completely get owned by Harley, just because, and she beat up Booster, somebody that could stand toe to toe with, some of the more powerful DC characters on a good day, just getting absolutely manhandled and almost killed by a psychotic little 20-something-year-old idiot, with an obsession for, poison ivy. It's just what? No. Oh God. It's just terrible. I want to get back to one thing in particular here, is that there are specific agendas at work here. And there have been ever since the beginning, ever since, King came on board and started his mission, and, with Bendis, but it does go back farther with Didiot and, with Lee. They're in a panic. They don't know what to do to right the ship. So they're doubling down on the things that they believe in, their go-to ideology, and it's absolutely destroying superheroes, because superheroes require heroism. They require heroism to work. Otherwise, you just end up with, super people who are, are usually rather villainous. They blurred the lines now between what heroes are and what they aren't. Harley is a villain that now they treat as a hero. You got Poison Ivy, who's a villain that they treat as a hero. Heroes that they now treat as villains, and I think that was the whole point, was to blur the line and to say, hey, look, there's no difference between heroes and villains. We're going to completely descrub the archetype of these archetypes here, and we're just going to show you this postmodernist picture of what we believe real life is like. I'm sorry, people don't read superhero comics for real life. They read superhero comics to see an idealized, this idealized view of what we can be and what the world can be, and is an escapism for a lot of the crap that we have in our lives, not to double down and see even worse crap, rather than, oh my God, it's painful. Go ahead, step in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. He was wanting to. Go ahead, dude.
Yeah, no, I can't stress enough exactly what you're saying. So, like I said, I'm in graduate school, and I'm actually studying comic books right now, and heroes and heroic narratives. And seeing this deconstruction and exactly what you're talking about, where this reality is trying to be forced into comic books and we're trying to blur this line between heroes and villains, that's a big problem. And I can see King and other people at DC trying to recreate what Alan Moore did with Watchmen and what Frank Miller did with The Dark Knight Returns. You can't do that for a sustained period of time. That can only be done over a mini series because that's all of it people can handle. They can't. Yeah. Comic books are not meant to have 80 issues of line blurring, moral blurring, and deconstructed heroes. That's not what they were meant to do. At the end of the day, you want to pick up a comic book to get away from all the crap that's happening in the real world. And these heroes in these comics, this is actually part of my graduate thesis, they teach us how to behave and they teach us how to act. They teach us how to behave morally. They instill life values and life lessons to us. And if people are going to be using Tom King and Brian Michael Bendis' characters for life lessons and moral values in 10 to 20 years, we're going to be in rough shape as a society. That's not what we want to look towards for encouragement.
I think that King and Bendis really need to read some Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And they need to clean their rooms. They need to get their crap together, and they need to grow up and become productive members of society, because these are people, these two men are people that have very serious emotional and mental issues, and they're writing it down on paper and trying to pass it off as superhero narrative. And it's not, it is, while I would say an interesting diversion, perhaps, like you said, a mini series, this is not what the characters should be going forward. They just completely trashed some very important touchstones in our society in the belief that, I'm just making it more real. Well, people don't want the ultra real when they're reading comics. They want to see what could be. They want to see what is better than what they have, so that they can aspire for more. And these aren't people that really, inspire anyone for anything except maybe to, cheat on their wives, become layabout, idiots, and, possibly stab people in the back. No.
Can I
Well, no, Chudy's he's in line. What do you want to talk about?
No problem. Thanks. I was born after like the final crisis. So when Barry and Hal were like dead in comics continuity, Wally West was the only Flash I knew, basically. So I grew up with Wally. I loved Wally. I didn't read much in the New 52, but when I read Rebirth and I saw Wally was back, I was like, oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Because, I loved Wally West. I loved him on the Titans run with Brett Booth as the artist. I thought that was, quintessentially good. So I was very happy when Brett was brought back with Scott Lobdell, because it was something that I, felt. And then Leviathan, I read only the first issue and I didn't come back because I had read it multiple times to understand what was going on here. And I couldn't grasp it. So I was like, I can't continue with it. Heroes in Crisis, I read every issue. And what they did, there were a couple things wrong with him. Of course, Wally was character assassinated. They destroyed him, completely, utterly humiliated him. And then, even though, and I'm liking Scott Lobdell's Flash Forward, but, seeing him in prison with like a beard, power collar on his neck, miserable. If I didn't read any more pages and you had inserted that into Heroes in Crisis, I think that would have been like, this is what you've done to Wally West. You've destroyed him and you've ruined his optimism. And, it's bad enough that his own wife and his children are gone from his memories. It's like, now he's moping. Even though, with Flash Forward, it's good to see him be a hero, enjoy himself. He's even admitting that I'm having fun. It's bringing out the best in Flash. But, to deconstruct and to basically say like, well, let's make the superhero like the average guy on the street, the average Joe. Let's, he has mental problems too, and he has this and that. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing when done, correctly. But with Heroes in Crisis, you have like every hero, every single hero, even with a couple of villains like, Harley Quinn, which by the way, Heroes in Crisis kind of made me lose a lot of respect for Harley Quinn, especially when she like kicked Wally West when he was like literally down, like just,
Well, she's a villain.
I know she's a villain, and I understand that, but I didn't need to see that because it was bad enough that, Wally was like, oh my gosh, I've killed all these people, and then I tried to kill my own self to prevent all of this and this and that. I'm sorry. And because, I guess Wally kind of, killed her obsession in Poison Ivy, but she came back through some rebirth plant shenanigans, all I know is that I know Harley's a villain. But the thing is like in the context of what they want to do, they want to make her like a Deadpool. So yeah, you're a villain, but you're kind of good. But at the same time, you still didn't need to kick Wally when he was like down, and then we see him in jail. And then so it was kind of like rubbing salt on the wound, basically. And no character needed to go through that at all. And to ruin, basically you've ruined all the Titans almost because Dick still hasn't recovered his memory. Speedy is dead. Mm-hmm. Wally is basically, still trying to redeem himself. Nobody from the Titans that Brett Booth drew for is like being shown. They're all gone, or they're all in the lowest points of their lives, or in Speedy's case, he's dead. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I know Dylan, you did a whole retrospective on Heroes in Crisis because it affected you in a certain way. Does it even in a conversation on which one was more disappointing or was more detrimental to DC Comics?
No, it's very obvious it's Heroes in Crisis. Event Leviathan's worst crime is the fact that it's a waste of time and a waste of money, but beyond that, it doesn't ruin anything. You can, right. If you didn't read Event Leviathan, it doesn't affect you whatsoever. If you didn't read Heroes in Crisis, depending on the characters you enjoy, it still affects you. Like, not only did he make Wally West a murderer, after Wally West murdered all these people, he went and propped up their dead bodies to frame innocent people. That's a step beyond just, oh no, I had this accidental power outburst, which was weird and didn't make any sense, but whatever. And then after that, he goes and frames people by propping up his friends' dead bodies that he just murdered. Like, that's just going a step beyond to ruin the character. Like, even more so than anyone could have thought. It's so bad. And then you have the awful sanctuary itself. It doesn't make any sense. It's the essentially like giving someone with PTSD. Imagine someone comes back from Iraq, they have PTSD. You give them a VR headset and say, hey, fix yourself. That's what they did here. There's no one helping these heroes. It's, again, assuming that they are actually damaged and all this stuff, even though no one really cares about, heroes having PTSD. Put yourself like in the story and say, okay, they have PTSD. They need help. What do? We give them a VR sanctuary and let them do whatever they want. Harley goes and kills Joker over and over again while Poison Ivy sits there and laughs. How's that helping anyone at all? It doesn't. They don't interact with each other either, which you think would actually help, because then they can maybe learn from each other and see that they're not alone, that other heroes are suffering as well. But no, they don't do that.
Although it really makes Barry Allen look like a terrible person and friend, because he's helping run the thing, and he knows that his friend isn't taking the treatment, and he never goes there to help him.
Yep. And the confessions are awful as well. He tried his best to ruin Hal Jordan in the one panel he was in where he says he doesn't understand what will is. What? Hal Jordan, the guy at the beginning of Rebirth that constructed a ring out of his own pure will,
the embodiment of will.
Yeah, doesn't understand what willpower is. What?
Yeah, the guy who went on in Darkest Night for, I think it's 6 or 7 panels, expressly explaining the power of will and what his will represents. Yep. And it's like 2 pages. It's right there. It's absolutely, it's black. Not in black and white. It's in color, beautifully colored. I suggest everybody read Blackest Night if you haven't. But, this is fully detailed. And King, I guess, didn't read that. King doesn't read very much of anything, I don't imagine. But he just he just gets some idea in his mind and just barrels forward with it because that's what assholes do.
Yep.
And let's be point blank here. That's what King is. He's just an asshole.
And all the confessions do stuff like that. And he also has a symptom that Bendis has in this book where everyone sounds the same. There's a lot of everyone ... and then there's, to put pauses in between the sentences. And everyone talks like that. A lot of characters, like Wally, talks like a Valley girl. He says like a lot, like all the time out of nowhere. And then for whatever reason, all the former Robins are very upset about being replaced as Robin. This would make sense if it was like right after one of them got replaced, but no, this is years later and all of them are still bitter for whatever reason. It doesn't make any sense, but in all their confessions, they're all fed up. Like Dick's like, screw that Jason guy for taking my spot. And Jason's the same way about Tim. And then Tim's like the same way about Damian. And it doesn't make any sense at all, but that's what Tom King threw in there. The confessions, like none of them make any sense, but you see it and it does come off as very pretentious, as like, oh, I am doing the next Watchmen here. But you read the confessions, it's like all this is out of character. Everyone sounds the same. Nothing makes sense. It seems like Tom King went out of his way to ruin as many characters as he could in that book, and also prop up Harley Quinn for whatever reason. She 1v3s the Trinity with ease, and then the Trinity argues afterwards. Like Batman and Superman have this like grade school, like second grader argument afterwards. Like Superman's like, oh yeah, she's better than you, Batman. Batman's like, nah, no, she's not. And it's so weird. But yeah, I think Heroes in Crisis, it's no contest. It's way worse than Event Leviathan.
All right, so Josh, you wanted to jump in on continuity?
Yeah, one of my big problems, this is branching off the whole Robin talk, is what Bendis has done with Tim Drake. It is so obvious that he didn't read one page of what James Tynion did in Detective Comics Rebirth. Tim Drake is my personal second favorite character in DC under Dick Grayson. And Tynion restored Tim Drake to greatness. He pulled all the crap that the New 52 had piled on Tim off, and he restored him as this great, like, genius character that was, being praised by Batman as one day you're going to be a better detective than even I am. And now all of a sudden he's just gone and then shows up completely like nothing ever happened with Tynion's run on Rebirth, and he is Robin again, even though Damian's Robin. And oh man, it's just DC's continuity is a mess, and Heroes in Crisis just made everything so much worse. It just ruined it was already going downhill at that point, but it's like they gave King 9 issues to say, mess everything up as much as you possibly can, have fun. And he just chose to promote Harley Quinn and then just took a massive dump on everyone else. Like he just got as many characters as he could in there. The Trinity, Wally. You saw minor characters killed off, like Hotspot. I didn't even remember who Hotspot was, but after I looked into it, I was like, man, why'd they kill him off? He could have been part of like a cool superhero team, like a new version of Young Justice or something. But they just used him as fodder. Mm-hmm. It's so bad. And Event Leviathan, I haven't been reading it, but Wes, I watched your recap of the final issue the other day, and it's just like, what a waste of time. You could have had such a great story with the detective work from Damian and Bruce, because they don't ever interact anymore, and that's another problem that yeah,
and you had the question in there. There's so much cool stuff that should have happened.
I'm sorry to take up your time, Ash. Go ahead if you want to talk on this.
Yeah.
Oh, no, man, I'm good. You guys all said many of the points that I wanted to cover, so props to all of you. And, yeah. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I think we've covered the events. Does anyone have one final word on the events before we move on to the next topic? All right, next topic. So despite King's mishandling of Batman, it remains the highest-selling ongoing comic in the industry, through September. Heroes in Crisis actually sold very well, just like Pele mentioned, and King is slated to release Batman, Catwoman, Strange Adventures, and possibly a Watchmen-related series in 2020. Bendis' sales are very much softer. Superman and Action Comics are shipping the 50th and 53rd most units in October. Event Leviathan sales are really soft for an event led by Batman and Superman. Yet he's been rewarded with the Legion of Superheroes, Warner Comics relaunches, and Bendis has recently stated Leviathan will be featured in many more DC ongoing comics and one-shots in 2020. Pele, you're the retail expert. Who do you think is positioned to do more long-term damage to DC moving forward, King or Bendis?
I think Bendis is. There, financially speaking, it's got to be Bendis because he still has this. I don't know, this reputation of sorts. I don't know where it came from. Probably Daredevil. A few other people just, they think of him as some amazing literary figure within comics, and he isn't. He's terrible, and and it's insidious in the way his awfulness is very insidious in that he writes in this very dense prose, and you kind of just sort of skim along through it, and you're kind of surfing, okay, and then you wait a second. You go back and you read, that didn't make any sense. What the hell is going on here? And it's almost like he covers up for not knowing what the hell to do with these characters with this very dense style of exposition. And I think that people equate that to quality writing. Maybe if we were back in the Victorian era when people were paid by the word, that would be something, but it isn't now. And, I think he sometimes forgets that comics are a visual medium, and the ideas that he has going forward are just bad ideas. And he sugarcoats it in a way that kind of makes people think that, what he's writing about is worthwhile. But then you stop and you think about it and you think, no, that isn't what this character would do. That isn't what, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they going in this direction? What the hell's going on here? And it's really embarrassing, actually, because, I think that with good editorial that he could probably be a decent writer, but it doesn't seem like DC's editorial even touches anything that he does. So he's just kind of allowed to just run amok and do whatever the heck he wants and, screw everything else. That's kind of the impression that I get, that the editors are afraid perhaps to step in and clean up the stupid crap that he's doing. So he's just sort of allowed to continue. Does anybody else get that impression?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I do believe that because I remember last year when Bendis is coming. The whole it's like sorry about that, Ash. It's like Bendis is coming. That the way that he was pushed was like, oh, we're going to give him unmitigated power to do whatever he pleases, to make all of the changes that he deems fit, because I think that maybe he's going to do a good job on Superman. And he was selling to the crowd. And to be fair, that's what Bendis was doing. Oh, I love Superman. I've got all of these good ideas for Superman. The fans are not going to won't be disappointed in what I'm going to do. And for the first miniseries with Man of Steel, it looked like that. I was kind of brought in. I was like, okay, Bendis is gonna do a pretty good job. And I actually thought that, under the assumption that, DC editorial is gonna look through this. They're going to ensure that, we're going to have a good product because this is Superman. You would think that you want to have your best editorial really be on your writers. Like, look, man, Superman, we know Batman is Batman. He's popular, but this is Superman. This is like our flagship, and we want the best work out there. And now we flash forward this year, and we see that everything that made Superman very popular in Rebirth has been thrown out the window. I don't think there's anything left from Rebirth that's left this year. Like, no, John is gone, and that will always hurt me. I didn't like because as far as I'm concerned, when they aged him, that killed a core of his character, which I can't really identify with because I'm no longer interested in reading about John because, it was said that with this 5G that they wanted to make him, the next Superman, which is, it's not bad in itself because I think that was going to be the point with John's character anyway. But I would have liked to see him grow up as a kid, see him rise to the ranks, because in Super Sons, he wanted to be a Teen Titan with Damian, and Damian wanted him to be a Teen Titan as well. And the fact that we don't see the dynamic between John and Damian is kind of bad. And in fact, even though I'm reading Teen Titans, the current one, it's still a very good book, but Damian has kind of regressed as a character, in part because John is gone. Because he no longer has like that optimistic. He no longer has his
that
Clark
moral influence anymore.
Exactly. He no longer has his like Clark to Bruce, because Clark always like would bring Bruce down to earth. Like, this ain't right, this ain't that, and that's what John was doing to Damian, especially after he was brought back to life. But John is gone, and now Damian is like running Guantanamo Bays outside of secret bases, enslaving villains and all of that. And Batman doesn't know, and he's picking fights with Jason Todd and losing those said fights. But yeah, with Bendis, I would say that it's going to take years to rectify the damage. With Tom King, what's interesting is that James Tynion released a picture of like, all of Batman's rogues galleries, and this is how I'm going to do, which makes it interesting because it seems that he wants to deviate from the Bat family because you're going to see less of them, which I think is good, which means like you won't see Batwoman or Batgirl or Jason Todd or, well, Dick Grayson still can't remember, but you won't see a lot of them in Batman books, which I think is a good thing because what Tom King was doing is like, I want to include the Bat family in almost every single aspect of Batman's, comic. And sometimes you just need Batman. Second of all, what I noticed in the February solicitations and what I had figured out months ago is like Harley Quinn is back on the Rogues Gallery. She's back on the Suicide Squad, which leads me to believe that in the future they're going to say, you know what, we're done with Harley Quinn trying to be a pseudo Deadpool. She's going to be bad. And it's like in the last issue of that Ivy and Harley book, it seems like they're going to split, which I think is good for the character. That's just me.
What do you think, Dylan? What is I mean, you're the Superman. As far as the direction he's talking about, where with the interactions between the characters and how they've changed.
Yeah, in terms of like long-term effects to DC, I think definitely someone was alluding to this earlier that Bendis is harder to revert than Batman than what King did to Batman. I feel like Tynion definitely with like some solid issues like 40-50 issues could revert everything to where basically everything's okay besides Alfred, because I feel like Alfred they'll want to keep for a little bit longer dead. I don't think they'll immediately undo it to where everything else like Dick Grayson can get his memories back like that. It'll be fine. The Bat family relationships can get restored. Batman punching Tim in the face and kind of neglecting Damian. That all that stuff I feel like can be restored to where he completely ruined the Kent family with aging up John and making Clark and Lois like not really love each other at all. It kind of seems like Lois kind of just uses Clark's for headlines. And there's no real love between the two at all. And they used to be this great family that were very reminiscent of Superman's adoptive parents, the Kents. And now that's just gone. I feel like it's a lot easier to reverse what happened with Batman to where with Superman, it's going to take a lot more. Like to de-age someone, I feel like it's weird to say, but it's harder than bringing them back from the dead to de-age them.
Or you just say that one of the things that got me was, or one of the ways that could get out of this is say that it wasn't really Jonathan Kent. It was the negative universe Jonathan Kent.
They could do that, true. They could retcon it and be like dark universe Jonathan Kent.
And then Jonathan Kent just shows up as the young Jonathan Kent is like, holy crap. He's like, what's going on, Dad? Who is that?
What if the Jonathan Kent that we got is Earth 2 Jonathan Kent and the real 10-year-old is still trapped on that planet.
Yeah.
That's a simple storyline that you just
They
come
could
up
do
with,
that.
and it's like, we got to go get my son.
Yep.
And it'd be amazing. A father going
That'd
to
be
rescue his
great.
son, fighting the
Then you find out
entire
that
syndicate.
You find out Darkseid is behind that, and that they've got to fight
Ah.
Darkseid again. And
I just got chills thinking about that. Like Superman just being like, fighting the whole syndicate by himself. Like, I'm getting my son. You know?
And then Earth 2, John has to sacrifice his life for the younger John.
Yep.
That'd be great. You'd have to find a writer that is very much not fond of Bendis and just does not care. That would be great.
Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
Jeff Johns.
Give
Can
it to
fix. Jeff
Geoff
Johns can
Johns.
fix anything. He fixed the New
Yep.
52. He can fix anything.
Yep.
I wish, but I don't see that happening. I hope they do it, but I don't
They'd
see
have
that
to kick
happening.
Didio
anytime soon.
out.
They won't do
They'd
it.
have
Yeah.
to kick Didio. They'd have to put Jeff Johns in as the main editor.
Yeah.
Editor in chief.
I love it. I wish they would do that.
That'd be so awesome.
But for whatever reason, it looks like we're stuck with Bendis for a while, which there's no reprieve. The only type of reprieve we have a little bit is the Superman Batman book from Williamson. So at least there's a little bit, like, that's been pretty solid 3 issues in. I like their back and forth, but Bendis also ruined relationships going forward, as well as, like you guys were talking about with Super Sons. Like Damian and Jonathan were great together, and now that's just a relationship that can't happen right now. It's just that's destroyed, along with Clark and Lois being destroyed, and then Superman, he's going to basically take away Clark Kent because the secret identity is gone, so he's literally just destroying the character of Clark Kent. He's going away. You're not going to have any more that. I don't know how the Daily Planet story is going to work, considering that's as much as it's terrible, that's a huge part of his Action Comics book is the Daily Planet. Without Clark there, I don't know how that's going to work. It's a lot hard to undo all the crap that Bendis done. It's comics, though. Anything can get undone in a moment's notice. But I feel like DC would be a lot more hesitant to undo some of the stuff that Bendis has done, to where with King, it looks like Tynan's going to do basically whatever he wants, aside from bringing back Alfred until I feel like way later on.
So let me jump in on this because I think Gohan has a lot that he wants to talk about.
Yeah, I'll wait till last. I'll let everybody else go because I got a lot I want to say. So,
so the topic it was again like who's in position to do more damage down the line and stuff, and I think you guys have all pretty much said points I agree with, and I just want to say I'd chime in on it's got to be Bendis, and primarily the one thing I don't think I heard anyone mention was that Bendis writes so many more books. Tom King is really only capable of writing like 1.5 books. He writes his Batman, and then he does his occasional miniseries that he launches like once a year. He has a miniseries. Where Bendis writes, we've seen him write about 10 books at a time between all of his own independent line that just utterly fails. No one buys Bendis. Like Pearl, Scarlet, all these books, they sell like 5,000 or less. That's an average of two books per store, and that's just terrible. The reason people buy Superman is not because of Bendis; it's because it's Superman, and they just want it to be good, as evident by the fact that anything Bendis writes that's not a named character, he can't sell, but he can destroy. And he's getting his hands on a lot of things between 2 Superman books, between the Wonder Comics that he controls, even though he doesn't write all the books. It's evident that he's sort of a de facto editor of that line, at least creative control wise. He's got Young Justice, which you guys made great points on earlier about how nothing matters. Just take these characters. Tim Drake, it doesn't matter who he is. I'm going to turn him into what I want him to be. Superboy, same thing. Doing that now with Legion. He's got a legion of characters that he's going to mess with,
and he doesn't understand any of those characters.
He doesn't. Yeah, and he's throwing Superboy into that mix. And then the rumor I heard, I'm still waiting to be more substantiated, is that Damian was going to get thrown in that mix too. So I could fully see Damian getting ruined, and Damian's a character that's already really volatile anyway, because so many writers don't know how to really do him, and Tomasi keeps trying to steer the ship every time when he's writing Batman, and then someone else will get a hold of Damian and like mess it up, and it's really making it tough. And then you guys mentioned earlier with Super Sons, with John being an influence on him, that was one point, but it was also Tomasi having a second book to write Damian outside of Batman to develop the character as well that he no longer can do. He can only write the character in his Batman book, and he doesn't want Batman, rightly so, to be the Damian book, and it's making it really tough. So Bendis is going to do all sorts of damage, not just in the direct things that he's doing, where he's writing these characters like crap and taking them down roads that they shouldn't go. Like for an example, as I made this comment in the chat, one of the key issues of Jonathan Kent was that he was 10 years old. People go, oh, well, characters age, yada, yada, yada. Yes, that's true. In reality, we all grow up and stuff. But when you grow up, you're not the same person you were. I am not the same person I was at 10 years old. 10 years old is part of his character. It's what makes Bart Simpson, being a little 9-year-old boy, makes Calvin and Hobbes. Would you want to read a teenage Calvin and Hobbes? No, it's part of that. Fundamentally is a defining factor of the character. And as soon as you age up the character, he's no longer, yes, he's Jonathan Kent in name, and he's the evolution, but he's not the 10-year-old character that we love. That's a fundamental part of who he is. And so that's an example of how you can directly destroy a character. But now I was also making a point about how you can indirectly, by omission, by taking it out of the hands with Damian, letting someone who knows what to do with the character, who's taking it in the right direction, go, oh, now you don't have a chance to do it. And so, yes, I definitely see Bendis absolutely 100% doing way more destruction. I think Tom King is just going to just be satisfied destroying Batman and Catwoman. And he's going to be like, hey, I'm so happy I deconstructed these characters beyond their deconstruction that they've already been done. And aren't you guys, and he's going to revel in, he keeps bragging about, we're all going to cry, you're going to shed tears. Oh, dude, that's not something to brag about. But Bendis is just going to do wholesale carpet bombing of DC. And it's evident to me, and this is, based on hearsay and different things, but that Didio has pulled Bendis in almost as like a creative ally because he can't work with Jeff Johns, or he doesn't like the way Jeff Johns does things, or they have conflicts of whatever creative ideas.
Jealousy and envy.
Bendis is a Jeff Johns-ish level fill-in on a creative level, not quality. Jeff Johns is a master. I'm not saying that, in my opinion, they're the same. I'm saying from a career level, when the suits are looking at, just like, hey, who's achieved the most? Bendis's resume is equal to Jeff Johns in that kind of sense. It's all fluff and nonsense. Fans know the difference, but the upper level management, and that's what Didio wants, because Didio's just a publisher. He's not a creative chief, and he wants someone who will be that's in his corner. And Jeff Johns isn't in anyone's. Jeff Johns does things his way, the right way, and he won't bend us, if you will, the way Bendis will. And that's what I think. And I think that Bendis is being that tool, and Didio could never be happier that he's got someone who will just do all these things that he's been wanting to do for probably a decade now. And that's my word.
Bendis is Didio's napalm. He'll just burn whatever he wants and just let it spread, and the fire keeps burning.
Yeah, he's his own personal weapon of mass destruction on characters. So does anyone else have anything last to say about the long-term effects they think Bendis or King are going to do before we head to the next question?
Yeah, I wanted to go last, but
hold on 1 second. So I want to say thank you very much to David Deister for the $15 super chat. Dan Didio must go. He is a toxic man who wants to relive past glory. I agree with that very much. I don't get why but this is the big problem with Didio. He thinks what makes DC Comics special are things like The Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. And those are great books, and those are memorable, and they'll be in print forever because they are great in a period of time, but they were out of continuity, and they never affected the characters long term because they were never meant to do that. Didio's problem is he thinks that's what separates DC from the other comic publishers. So he wants to bring in the character deconstruction into continuity and alter these characters and break them down and make them no longer be heroic. And in my opinion, that's the fundamental misunderstanding of Didio, besides the fact that he doesn't know his audience, is that he doesn't understand that they need to be heroes. They can't just be everyday people whose lives are ruined at the first time of a sign of trauma. That's why Bendis is terrible for this, because his continuity and his eye for history and character traits is awful. And King just wants to infuse his own personal trauma into every story he writes, and it's just ruining everything. Does anyone else have anything to say about Didio and trying to relive past DC glory?
I mean, yeah, it's exactly what you said, Wes. You can't say it any better than that.
Yeah.
All right. So did anyone have one last word on the long-term effects before Josh went?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I want to go last. Anyone else that has anything to say can,
Go for it.
All right, Josh.
Take us away, Josh.
Okay, so I made a list for this. So I'm going to definitely say that Bendis is the worst for long-term effects on DC Comics. It's like we said earlier, he's Didio's personal weapon of mass destruction for character assassinations. I've just watched every title I loved at DC just be completely carpet bombed and destroyed by Bendis. But a couple of the points that I wanted to touch on was mainly Damian as a character and what John being removed from Damian's life is going to do for the character. How all of this affects Doomsday Clock, which is a whole nother situation, and Bendis's crap with this new Teen Lantern character. So I'll start with Damian. I feel bad for Peter Tomasi, and I've met him in person and talked to him about this kind of stuff. I met him right before Bendis started with the Superman runs, and he said some stuff to me that I won't repeat. But it was very interesting to hear that and his thoughts on them just turning these stories. I lost my train of thought with that. I'm sorry, but. It was interesting to get Tomasi's thoughts on DC stripping writers that have spent time with these characters of these books and handing them off to people like Bendis who just go on and completely destroy them. Tomasi's Superman and Super Sons runs were doing well in copies ships, copies sold, and reviews. There's no reason to take him off the title, but they did it for Bendis by name, and Bendis has slandered the title now. So, yeah, that's a good point about, I'm seeing in the chat now, the private chat about Bendis's lackeys that he brings the Portland Mafia in to write books. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I called him a cancer before, because he infects and then he spreads. He just spreads out and it just goes everywhere. Which is bad. He brings in these terrible writers, and I hate to use the term SJW, but he brings in these politics and these SJW writers, and they just ruin books. But back to my point about Damian. We were seeing Tomasi work with him with John, and he was developing into a more traditional Robin, and readers loved it. Everybody was liking that he was moving away from this dark, brutal assassin character. He was starting to become human. He was having fun with John in Super Sons, and they just stripped that out and immediately reverted Damian back to the character he was before when everybody didn't like him. He's dark. He's brutal. He's doing things behind Batman's back that even Batman would have moral problems with, which is pretty bad because Batman he toes the moral line. So you're ruining Damian for years to come because you're just stripping. Wes, I think you mentioned before that John was sort of the Clark to Damian's. It was like Clark and Bruce. Clark is the light that guides Bruce out of the darkness when he needs it, and Damian no longer has that. So he's going back to this perpetual brutality and darkness, and it's just not good. The new Teen Titans title is good. That's one book that I kept reading, but I want that character growth back for Damian. I want Damian to become more of a traditional Robin. So He's ruining Damian, so you're seeing his fingers, Bendis' fingers spread into the Superman family and the Batman family, and both of them are going to have long-term effects that are going to take years from a good writer to correct. And a lot of this goes into Teen Lantern as well. I don't know a lot about Young Justice because it's not worth my time to read it. The title's trash. But Teen Lantern, where this girl, this character trope that Bendis has of like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old black girl that just is instantly super smart. We've seen it with Riri Williams. We saw it with Miles Morales, although Miles Morales isn't a girl. Now we're seeing it with Teen Lantern. Like, this isn't a popular character trope, but you keep doing it. And editors and publishers keep letting him do it. It's like, when is someone going to stand up to him and say, listen... Oh, okay. Wes, if you want to read the super chat, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much to James Robbins for the $9.99 super chat. Thanks again for having a great combos like this. What are some runs by DC from the early to mid-2000s that are good to read, such as Checkmate or The Outsiders? I've read Secret Six and Blackest Night. All right, Dylan, we're going to start with you. What would you recommend mid-2000s?
I don't know about anything related to Checkmate or The Outsiders, but mid-2000s, you got to go with Jeff Loeb and Ed McGuinness on Superman Batman. Like, that is key mid-2000s comics right there, and like perfecto, and definitely defines the era very well. Jeff Johns had a really good Teen Titans run around that time as well. There's a lot of great comics you can't really go wrong with from that era. That's like when I really started reading comics, was during that time. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Jeff Johns' Superman Batman.
All right, I'm not sure if it's from the mid-2000s, but if you like Hawkman, Jeff Johns' first two books on Hawkman when he was writing the character are fantastic. And Hawkgirl's actually in there, which we're not getting right now. And I would definitely give that one a 2 thumbs up. Chudy, do you have anything that you would recommend from the early 2000s or mid-2000s? Oh, he might not be there. Ash, what do you recommend from the mid-2000s for DC Comics?
Well, admittedly, I wasn't a fan of DC Comics mostly, during that time. I kind of came on, I'm a latecomer, but I did discover that Jeff Johns is a modern master. And while I haven't read the whole story, I'm trying to collect it right now. Jeff Johns' Hawkman is something I would mention. And just based on everything that I've read of Jeff Johns, you literally can't go wrong. He's not a big spokesperson the way like a person like Stan Lee was, but if there were a modern day equivalence to a person who has such a profound effect on the face and the direction and the voice of the comics coming out of a company for DC, Jeff Johns could be or should be that equivalent. He everything he writes just feels like, oh, this is DC. This is what DC is all about. And it's really sad that this guy is not being utilized. Go back and read anything you can get a hold of him where it's, I don't think it was mid-2000s. I don't know when Flash Rebirth came out or Green Lantern's Rebirth. You can go read back, Jeff Johns' Superman stories. I mean, just look up Jeff Johns and go back and pick up that stuff. Yeah.
All right, Josh, did you have any recommendations for the mid-2000s for DC Comics?
Oh yeah, Dylan mentioned Jeff Johns' Teen Titans run. That run is absolutely fantastic. A lot of the ones I would recommend would be like also kind of late 90s, early 2000s. So Chuck Dixon's Nightwing is amazing. I know a lot of people didn't, but I really enjoyed Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern. When Kyle Rayner took over as Green Lantern, I enjoyed that, and I think Geoff Johns was on The Flash during that time when like he introduced Professor Zoom and stuff. I think that was mid-2000s. So that was all really good too. But Geoff Johns' name just comes up. It's all over that. That was when he was at his best. It was his JSA run, I think, was during that time too, which was really, really good. So just look up Geoff Johns.
You're the elder statesman of the channel. What are you giving out as a recommendation for mid-2000s DC Comics?
I loved Green Lantern during that time. I know that's kind of a little bit controversial, but that's when I started reading Green Lantern. I enjoyed I enjoyed the stories for the most part. I wasn't really in it because I didn't understand. I wasn't really understanding the lore and stuff like that. And it was before I went back and started reading the early Hal Jordan issues. But and also I love the during that time too. Jeff Loeb, his work at DC during that time was pretty spectacular. Well, Batman during that. Wow. Yeah, you had some pretty amazing. Was that when that was also during the time when oh gosh, my mind was that when Morrison first started, was in the 2000s?
He was late 2000s.
Yeah, he was late 2008, 2009, I think.
Because that really caught my attention because I hadn't really been reading Batman since since the Death in the Family and stuff like that as much. I mean, I kind of picked up issues here and there. I was buying it, but I wasn't, really reading it. But, I kind of got a little bit tired of the death and everything like that. And I was like, everybody just, it just seemed like Batman would turn into, they're going to kill somebody off. Oh, they're it just seemed like the tired old trope, of killing off somebody important to the hero just so they can, instigate a response. But then when Morrison came with the world's greatest detective angle, I know that some people criticize Grant Morrison for that with his, that Mr. Prep. The master prepper Batman, where he had contingencies for every single thing you could possibly imagine. But I liked that. It was the way that a regular human being could deal with, running around with gods, and what would happen if one of these gods runs amok, who's going to stop Wonder Woman when she goes insane, if Superman's off on the other side of the universe, and it's kind of like this I kind of enjoyed the more paranoid Batman, and I kind of put myself into that position of how would I feel if I had an Amazon goddess, basically God incarnate in Superman, a guy that could destroy the entire world by sheer will alone, Hal Jordan or any of the other Green Lanterns. How would I deal with having to be on a team with them at the same time, and all I have is money and paranoia, and just apprehension. What would I do? And it's that's what you do. You'd basically.
All right. We're going way beyond the scope of this question.
But Anyway, I'm just saying on that. But yeah, I think Grant Morrison's Batman during that time was pretty fantastic.
Also, if you like Blackest Night, if you read Jeff Johns' Green Lantern Rebirth, followed up with Sinestro Corps War, finish it up with Blackest Night, it feels like one of the best trilogies you'll ever read in your life.
Exactly.
All right, now back to Josh so he can finish up his point. Thank you so much for this.
Okay. So I mentioned Damian. I was pretty good with that. Like the long-term effects of what Bendis has done to the Superman family also branched into the Batman family. But just this Teen Lantern thing where this girl hacked Oa and gave herself a power ring, like that whole premise just completely destroys everything that the Green Lantern Corps is about. The Green Lantern Corps is supposed to be about you earning your ring through some display of willpower, and I'm just like, you couldn't have given the same character a ring the traditional way, like have her experience something young in her life, like losing a parent or losing a close friend or something, some kind of tragedy that she gets over, and then the ring comes to her and she gets it the natural way. That would have been a great story that I would have been into. I would have been like, okay, this gives us a tragedy. So most of us have seen some kind of tragedy in our lives. We can relate to it. So that's important. And it lets her become a hero in her own way. In my opinion, she's not even a hero. She stole a power ring. You bastardized the whole premise of the Green Lantern Corps. You can just, what, can I go buy a ring on eBay? Like, it's so stupid, and it's just,
don't give Bendis ideas on that. He'll have a power ring up on eBay in the universe, in the DC universe, in a heartbeat. Anyway, go ahead.
It's just like, I'm like, how are you? This has been the way the Green Lantern Corps has been for decades, and you're just absolutely changing it for this one character to shoehorn in this diversity and stuff. And it's ridiculous. Like, you're just get rid of the Corps. Like, as soon as I saw that, like, I'm done with the Green Lantern main continuity Green Lantern comics at that point, because the legacy of the ring and the legacy of what it means to be a lantern is just completely ruined by that one scenario. It's just ridiculous. And the final point that I wanted to touch on involves both Bendis and King with Doomsday Clock. Doomsday Clock, and I've been saying this for months in the comment section on Wes's videos, that they were going to distance the readers from Doomsday Clock, specifically DDO and Jim Lee, and they were going to force it out of continuity, and they've done that. I think it's 100% confirmed with what's happening with Batman, because if we look at the way Batman's portrayed in Doomsday Clock, he has a completely different costume, and it's still Bruce Wayne. His costume looks a lot like Earth 1 Batman's in Doomsday Clock. And there, from what I remember Jeff Johns talking about when this all started with Doomsday Clock, was that the title was supposed to happen over a year, and then they were going to do one-shots, kind of like they did after, I think, Final Crisis. It was like a 1 year later or something like that. It was one of the crises they did a 1 year later book for most of, like, the major characters. And that's what we were supposed to get. And that would cover the time between what was going on now and then Doomsday Clock. And we would see those characters fall into the way they were in Doomsday Clock. That's not going to happen, I don't think. So we've seen this Doomsday Clock just get completely removed from continuity. Unless Luke Fox is going to spend like 6 weeks as Batman. But I don't think that's going to be the case. If they're going to do something like that, they're going to commit to the bit and go for the long term with it. But yeah, I mean, both of them have done horrible things to just remove Doomsday Clock completely from the equation. And I don't understand that, because DC's and Wes, you've talked about this at length too. DC's continuity is currently, it's a mess. It's all over the place. No one knows what's canon, what's not, what's in continuity, what timeline are we in. No one knows what books are in, what books are not in current continuity. And they had the ultimate MacGuffin to fix continuity for good, even better than it was with Crisis on Infinite Earths with Dr. Manhattan and Doomsday Clock. All they had to do was have Dr. Manhattan snap his fingers and say, okay, this timeline happened, this one didn't. And they could just choose the ones that are the most popular with readers. So you can take those pre-crisis elements that everybody loves and miss. You can bring those back. You can take the best parts of post-crisis, throw them in. Pre-Flashpoint, throw them in. New 52, there was good things in New 52, whether we like to admit it or not. The Court of Owls was good. There was good stuff with Green Lantern in New 52. You can keep all that. And all the Rebirth stuff, you could just have him pick and choose. It was a character that you could have pick and choose your continuity and set it perfectly in stone. You could literally have him write your timeline for you. And they just threw it all away. And I don't understand it. It's just... And it for me, that all comes back to the work that Bendis and King have done. It's just, as soon as they were given free reign to do what they wanted to do, and I didn't know that King fired his editor from the previous like 40 issues. I didn't know that, and you can definitely see it, because he wanted to be left unchecked. He wanted to be able to do what he wanted to do, and those two single-handedly have just destroyed Doomsday Clock and everything great about DC Comics. And I've talked to some of the writers in person. I've talked to Peter Tomasi about it, and a couple different other talents in person. And the way the writers feel about it, there are stories that there are writers for DC Comics that have had years worth of stories written out that were just left on the table. Benjamin Percy's a great example of that. I would like to sit down and talk with Benjamin Percy for a while. He had years worth of Nightwing stories ready, and his Nightwing run was awesome. It felt like Chuck Dixon from the 90s again. And they're like, nope, King's got to shoot him in the head, and we're going to have Rick Grayson, which is just absolutely terrible, and we're just going to leave years worth of these stories on the table. And I know that there had to have been years worth of Superman stories for both Jurgens and Tomasi that were left on the table because they had to invite this stupid Bendis in to just ruin everything. And I mean, personally, Dick Grayson is my favorite character in all of fiction, and Dick Grayson is the character I'm writing my MA thesis on. And it's just watching what's happening to him right now is just absolutely, it's disgusting. Like, it turns my stomach when I think about it. It's so bad. But these two have just completely burned the legacy of DC down for probably the next decade. Honestly, it is going to take King's damage is much more reparable. Dylan said it, like, you can fix this with one good Batman writer, and Tinian could do it with 50 or 60 issues. He could fix Batman and make it back into 100,000s again. But the long-term effects on the DC universe that are branching out of the Superman the changes to Superman and the Superman family that Bendis has done, it's going to take a decade to repair the damage that he's done. It's widespread. You know, you saw Bendis ruin the whole, I still say Mr. Oz with Jor-El. There was a different conclusion planned for that, and Bendis just changed all of that, ruined it. And that was a fascinating story to me, going through Rebirth and leading in with the button and the Oz effect and stuff like that, the event in Action Comics and Superman that happened. Like, that, it was such a fascinating story, and I think we've seen a lot of changes made to these overall titles because of what's going on with Bendis specifically, and because of what's going on with Tom King. But we've watched all these characters that Rebirth restored to glory, like Tim Drake and Dick Grayson, who became Nightwing again, and Wally West and the Titans. And I'm glad that someone earlier mentioned Brett Booth's work on the Titans with Wally and stuff. Donna Troy was a big part of that run that I just loved the way she was written. I loved her costume redesign. It was amazing. And now, again, Bendis with his Portland Mafia coming in. You have Zoe Quinn coming in to write an infected story for Donna Troy. Like, that character it's DOA. That character is dead for decades. You're going to have to just honestly kill her off and bring her back 10 years when you decide to do another Crisis event to clean the slate of all this garbage that King and Bendis have piled onto it. It's just,
I'm wondering if they're going to touch Zoe after all the situation with the situation with her ex-boyfriend's suicide. Now
it's
that's
disgusting.
A really ugly situation.
It's disgusting.
And I don't know
that
if they
she's
really want to be in that proximity with her.
It's just disgusting she's even getting the book with Donna Troy that she is with that, because that news broke within, like, I think it was in the same
48
week.
hours.
48 hours, yeah. That book should have been pulled immediately from all solicits, all shelves. It should have been pulled and shut off. Like, no, this isn't happening. And I think that we can see a lot of this stuff with Year of the Villain, with the infected characters. It all goes back to this. A lot of the characters that were restored to their glory with Rebirth, Hawkman came back in Metal, but Vendetti was killing it on Hawkman. It was DC's best book for a long time. And you're just seeing these characters just absolutely ripped apart, and literally they're called the Infected, and they're making them evil. You know, and I think a lot of this also comes back to, I still say Dan Didio is a very jealous, bitter, and envious man, because the New 52 was his baby, and it failed. And Geoff Johns had to come back to fix it, and he did. And Didio can't stand that. He hates it, and he wants to rip apart all of the good stuff that Geoff Johns did with Rebirth. And everything we've been talking about, all these characters, Wally, Damian, Hawkman, the Titans, Superman, Geoff Johns restored every single one of those characters to greatness, specifically in the Rebirth one-shot. Those characters were on his list to fix, and he did it. And Dan Didio can't stand it, and we've watched him systematically use King and Bendis to rip those characters apart and assassinate them. It's so sad. It's disgusting. It's...
You know, it's weird when you mention what they could have done with Dr. Manhattan to fix out their continuity and everything. Jonathan Hickman is just done all that with X-Men, with his House of X, Powers of 10 stories, with the revelation of the reincarnated character where you can just push aside all the stuff that sucked, keep all the good stuff that you wanted in, and then who's there writing Wolverine and X-Force, two of the most important books on that run. Ben Percy, who was basically shoved aside off of Nightwing because he knew that the Rick Grayson storyline was stupid, and he didn't want to do it. So, all right. So we've had a lot of great points. A lot of very interesting back and forth. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. I would say overall, I think Bendis is in a slight lead as far as hurting Superman versus King's effects on Batman. It's not even close as far as Heroes in Crisis versus Event Leviathan. Tom King's damage done with Heroes in Crisis is exponentially worse than what Bendis was actually able to do with Event Leviathan because it was such a nothing burger. But it looks like, we kind of all agree that the overall long-term effects, Bendis is going to have a more dramatic or a dire effect on DC Comics. So it's time to get the final verdict. Chudy, you're my man. Who would you say is going to be is the winner of this debate? Who's hurting DC Comics more?
Oh, it's no question. It's Michael Bendis, man. He's ruining DC Comics, and as it was mentioned, I think Tynion is going to rectify most of Tom King's damage to Batman. That's my hope. You're already seeing Scott Lobdell rectifying a lot of damage that was done to Wally West. The fact is that King's mistakes can be rectified, and I even mentioned earlier, and I guess in a chat with you when we heard that he was doing a 12-issue maxi series with Batman and Catwoman. I necessarily don't have a problem with that. I think that King does very good work when he's given a tight schedule, when he's given, you have 12 issues, do as you please, and we're going to edit you and see how it works out. So that's that. But Bendis, I can't tell you how shocked I was when I looked at February solicitations and I saw this guy, I think, got 3 more books. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's got 3 more books. He's got Legion of Superheroes. He's got Young Justice. He's got Naomi. He's got Action Comics and Superman. Like, I don't know I don't know. I can't comprehend that. So, yeah, for me, Bendis is by far the winner in terms of ruining DC Comics. And also, he's ruined Superman for now. I don't see how he can rectify what he's done unless he receives an epiphany or unless they decide to give him the Tom King treatment, which is like, look, you got 10 issues and then you're done. That's just it. Yep.
All right. So, Dylan, who's your thoughts? Who's the big winner? Is it Bendis or King?
Oh, it's Bendis, definitely. Bendis has destroyed characters, he's destroyed relationships, and there's no end in sight is the thing that's really scary about Bendis, to where at least with King, he's getting off Batman, he's on a maxi series now, he's probably going to just continue to do that for a while where he'll just jump from character to character, to where Bendis just keeps getting more control, and there's no end in sight for what's going to happen with Bendis. Also, there's no really way to get rid of him. There's not like, oh, just boycott him. If you don't like him, don't buy him. If you stop, giving money, then he'll get kicked off books. His books aren't selling, and he keeps getting more creative control. There's nothing you can do. I feel like he is definitely the biggest loser at DC Comics, and he just keeps spreading and destroying more and more things. And he's Bendisfying everything. He's just taking every character and tweaking them to be more Bendis-like, and it's terrible, and it's just sad that there's nowhere that I see like, okay, it'll end here. It's like, no, he just keeps spreading. Every time I think we've reached the limit on Bendis, it just keeps going. They give him another big book. So I feel like it's definitely Bendis by a long shot. And like he was saying, that at least some things with King are being rectified already, like the Wally West miniseries and Tynion coming in, and everything Tynion said has sounded really good so far. So I'm excited for that. To where with Bendis, there's nothing that's coming forward that's like, oh, this will rectify what Bendis has ruined. There's nothing there.
All right. So I think I know where everyone's going. Josh, what's your final verdict?
Bendis, 100% Bendis. One other small thing I forgot to mention is Connor Kent with Bendis. Just no one wanted that version of Connor Kent back. We wanted the one with simple black Superman t-shirt with the red logo and jeans. That's what we wanted from Geoff Johns' Teen Titans run. We didn't get that. We got this garbage, flamboyant 90s Superboy back. Bendis is just... It is going to take them a decade to clean up Bendis' mess after he's done. If DC survives that long anyway, which I hope they do, but we'll see.
All right. Pele, who's the winner? Bendis or King?
It's got to be Bendis. As much as I despise King, and I despise what he's done with Batman and creation of Gotham Girl and that entire stupid Bane saga BS, and it's just, but he basically destroyed Batman and, you know, a couple of Kirby's long-term characters like Captain Atom, but actually in Wally West, but it's close, I think, but Bendis makes me not want to read DC at all. It makes Bendis infuriates me to the point where I don't want to buy any of his books for my store. It's that bad. It's, you know, it's I see what people are doing as far as their buying habits and how many people have canceled titles, and the fact that this is, to put it into perspective right here, at one point DC was selling 40% of new comic sales in my shop. 41%, I think, was at the peak, and that's when Marvel was really stumbling. And this is Marvel Town. This area is like really big Marvel, but DC was really holding their own at that time because they were putting out really good quality books, and it was high quality content, and people were paying attention. They were taking notice. They were like, "Oh, well, this is really good." You know, with the New 52 is over. The Rebirth launch was really good. You know, they were really excited about the button, you know, and then boom, it's like somebody just flipped a switch and everything went to hell.
Yep.
And it's slowly just, I mean, not even slowly, it's rather quickly just spiraling down out of control. So you've got, you know, it dropped from 40% in new comic sales, 30%, 20%. And now I'm sitting, I still can't believe it, 16% of new comic sales in my shop are DC. Image sells 12. So Image will be my, you know, if it slips much further and Image gets a pop in sales, Image could be my number two comic company as far as new comic sales in my store.
Wow.
How bad does DC have to fail to put themselves in that situation? And it just leaves me wondering, you know, can anything be fixed going forward? Is there a will to fix anything going forward? Is there anybody who can stop this and pull back on Didiots, you know, plans for the future? And I just don't think there is. Marvel has the sort of Damocles hanging over their head that is Disney. And if they're not profitable and they don't do what needs to be done, then they're going to get thrown out the door. They're going to hit the bricks. You know, they brought in Kevin Feige, I think, to kind of, you know, neutralize a lot of those elements and kind of, you know, stabilize things as far as Marvel's publishing is concerned. But where's the controls as far as DC? And I just don't see it's happening. So Bendis long term, because Bendis is actually representing a sea change in ideology that I think could just destroy such iconic characters. So that's it. It's Bendis because he's doing what Bendis does, which is, you know, subverting everybody's ideas, and subverting what a lot of creators have written before. So
very well said, Ash. So we've talked about DC Comics snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Who do you think has had the biggest detriment to DC Comics in 2019? King or Bendis?
Without a doubt, Brian Michael Bendis. And it's very funny because when the Bendis was coming phenomenon was happening, I was the guy championing it and telling everyone, calm down, the sky is not falling. And now I'm eating those words. Brian Michael Bendis has proven to me to be the biggest hack in comic books. The guy has written up to, it may be more, but I've counted at times 10 books per month, which means on a normal writing schedule, that's churning out one comic every 2 days. There's no way you could be the greatest writer in the history of comics. You can't write good stories in 2 days, not month after month. All he's proven to be able to do in comics characters that he creates is make Mary Sue's. When it comes to Naomi, if you read that Naomi miniseries, it's just a girl thinking she's special, and then ta-da, at the end, turns out she's special. She's a god. Whoop. Yep. She didn't earn anything. There's nothing special. She had no childhood traumas, no hardships to win over, nothing. She just thought she was special, and then look at the end. Oh, ta-da, reveal, I'm special. Then take Teen Lantern. It was one of the aficionados commented earlier. Oh, I'm so awesome. I just hacked a Green Lantern ring at 9 years old using my mom's laptop. That's how amazing I am. And now I'm the bestest Teen Lantern ever. Didn't have to earn anything. There's no reason. She's a superstar hacker. Can we get some exploration about maybe why she's able to do something? Nope. She just is because she needs to be. That's not how you create believable, or I don't want to say believable, but it's not how you create characters that people want to invest in. We invest in characters like Batman because we look at his hardship and go, oh my God, what would it be like if I witnessed that at, a little kid's age? If you know that story. Or Spider-Man, what would happen if I was in that situation and I got my uncle killed?
It's like Skip and Tosh. Just to interject, it's like Skip and Tosh said, Bendis sees himself as the great white savior.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. But, these other characters we can invest in because they mean something. Their stories are profound. And over the decades, some of these stories started off very simple, like Batman and Spider-Man, the examples I just gave. But over the years, many writers came on and they chipped away a little bit at that statue and cleaned it up a little bit and added some polish. And, they didn't completely reinvent the wheel. They were just like, oh, what would, like Grant Morrison on Batman, he didn't reinvent Batman. He's like, but what would happen if we took Batman just a little bit further in this other direction that hasn't been explored? And over that time, the things that stay there, and the things that didn't really stick so well, he's like, okay, we'll just sort of slowly forget about that. And 80 years later, these characters have become polished. They've become refined. They've become iconic in our culture. But Bendis is the opposite of that. And then on top of doing all of these cardinal sins in comic books, he's got this whole, what I call, and other people call, the Portland Mafia, over there in Portland, that revere him as some sort of great god of writing. Bendis, can you believe it, used to teach writing at college, and he's got all these followers, and he brings them over to be like, I'll give you a job. And so now all these, if 10 books is the most Bendis can write, doesn't matter, because he's got Matt Fraction, he's got Kelly Sue DeConnick, and these people, they're gonna be given books, not on merit, but because Bendis is giving jobs out to his friends. No one wants to buy Kelly Sue DeConnick books or Matt Fraction books, which is why they couldn't get a job at DC before Bendis. But that's the real damage that he's going to ultimately do, because we can all skip Brian Michael Bendis books. We can go, he's bad, and then we can watch his sales dwindle. And this is what I want to wrap up my point with. To all you guys listening on this, please don't just boycott. I encourage you not to buy comics that are bad, but please do support the writers and the artists and the people that are good. If you step away from DC Comics, which is completely your right, it's your wallet, do what you want. But if you step away from DC Comics completely, and there are still good writers out there, like I believe, like Tomasi, Jurgens, is, whatever writers are your personal favorites that you think are doing really good work, support them, because it's absolutely crucial that the bean counters at DC see Bendis numbers dropping, but then your favorite writers and artists, their stuff rising, because that is the thing that they cannot argue. A bunch of screaming fans on social media only goes so far. And if someone like Robert Venditti, who's my personal favorite, is doing amazing work on Hawkman. I heard he's going to be taking over Justice League. So if Scott Snyder's not your personal bag like he is mine, then by all means check out Venditti is one of the best guys in comics right now, and he doesn't sell a lot of books. You know why? Because he's not a household name, and he hasn't been given a title like Batman or Superman that will make him a household name. These other guys, Bendis is inflated by his properties. Everyone knows Legion of Superheroes. Everyone knows Young Justice. Everyone knows Superman. These are books that sell. Bendis also has a bunch of titles, and I'm sure none of you guys are buying right now, like Scarlet and Cover and Pearl. These books sell nothing because they don't have the title. No one cares about that. No one wants to read garbage, but they do want to read Young Justice, and even a mediocre Young Justice, if you're a huge Young Justice fan, people will still buy it, and some people will even convince themselves that it's good. And if you like it, more power to you. But I hope this whole panel, I think, illustrated some great points, and we unanimously elected Bendis as the biggest failure at DC. I'm done.
I agree. Yes, Bendis is the biggest failure. But the good news is Bendis and King don't write everything. There are some good comic books out there. Let's do our comic book recommendations for the week. Master Chudy, since we're having audio issues with you want to go first? What do you recommend this week?
All right, cool. Thanks. Sorry about the issues. But this week, this past week, I recommend, of course, Batman and the Outsiders. Brian Hill, very good writer, very good dude on Twitter, really cares about his work. That's somebody who I would really suggest, looking into his work. Also, his Fallen Angels, which I think it was pretty good. I have to check it out, but I recommend that. I would also recommend the Black Cat Annual, #1. If you want a book that kind of will whet your palate in terms of doing a comic book wedding correctly, then I would recommend the Black Cat Annual. It's very good. It felt like a classic Black Cat Spider-Man team-up. It's very entertaining. And next week, recommend Teen Titans because that book doesn't fail.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, Dylan. Wait, never mind. We got a super chat. Thank you very much to Chase. I'm going to mess this up. Liebenguth for the $5 super chat. Recommend Venditti Hawkman. Awesome book that needs some love. Ash, you like Hawkman from Robert Venditti?
I love Hawkman.
All right, can you give me 2 to 3 minutes and sell all the other viewers that maybe aren't on the Hawkman bandwagon? Why Chase, you and I, it sounds like Josh, we all love Hawkman. Yeah. Why is it so great?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have to just real quick caveat the beginning here. I started off thinking Hawkman was stupid. I looked at the character and I was like, oh my gosh, that costume, the guy running around with the beak and wings and he has got a mace. To me, he looked just dumb. And I don't see him that way anymore. That was completely biased eyes, I admit. I read, everyone was talking about, oh, Venditti's, this new Hawkman series is really good. It's really good. You should check it out. And DC kept canceling title after title that I was buying on the New Age of Heroes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I guess I'll pick up this Hawkman book that everyone's talking about and try it out. And lo and behold, oh my goodness, Hawkman 1 through 12 is one of the greatest from an ongoing series, not like a mini series, but like just from an ongoing comic, one of the greatest story arcs in comics I've ever read. It's not profoundly deep. It's not going to be this big introspective thing. It's just great, heroic stories. It's a paragon of virtue. It's about a man who's fallen to the depths as low as he could go, and then he picks himself up, and he rights himself and says, no more, this is wrong. And it's all founded, not in a sappy way, but it's rooted at the seeds of a love relationship that might arguably be the greatest love story in all of mainstream comics between him and Hawkgirl. And Hawkgirl's barely in the book. Venditti hasn't even gone to Hawkgirl really yet. But anyways, it tells the story over time. It takes the origin of Hawkman, and it doesn't replace it. It doesn't go, you know what, all those origins you thought you knew, we're going to erase it and tell something new. Venditti so ingeniously goes, no, all that stuff actually was real. You just perceived it differently. Let me explain the missing key that explains all these things. It puts it together. And by the time you get to issue 7, this is important if you check the series out, because the trade paperback first issue only goes to issue 6. Issue 7 is what you need to get to. That's the new, I say new origin, but it's not. It's just it's a new perspective of the origin. And then issues 8 through 12 is a roller coaster ride. It's like the Return of the Jedi, and sorry for my dog, of the story. And it's epic, and it's Hawkman saving the day in a way that is something I've never seen in comics, and it could only be done in Hawkman, and it's just fun. And there were times I was getting chills, and I just wanted to jump up and cheer. Fantastic. Check it out, and then decide if you want to keep reading.
All right. Do you have any other recommendations, Ash?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Hawkman number 18, by the way, came out this past week. Detective Comics 1015 is telling a really interesting Mr. Freeze story. And if you are, geez, dog, if you are upset about Batman because Tom King, it was your choice for who's ruining DC Comics, check out Detective Comics, because Peter Tomasi is doing the exact opposite. And then this coming up week, I recommend, I think everyone knows about Absolute Carnage by now, but Batman White Knight Victor Von Freeze one-shot is coming out. And, and Justice League. Justice League is quietly one of the best books at DC, in my opinion. That's something you should check out as well.
All right, thank you very much. In the chats, Heaviest Hope is recommending X-Men, X-Force, Fallen Angels, Detective Comics, and Deceased. FF2 is recommending Fallen Angels, Batman and the Outsiders, Curse the White Knights, and White Knight and X-Force. All right, do we got any more in here? Oh, I'm trying to catch up. It looks like we got all of them. All right, Josh, what would you recommend for readers today?
So I get my books online because there's not a shop near me, so this week's haven't arrived yet, but what I'm looking forward to is definitely Batman and the Outsiders. Dexter Soy with the artwork on that. Oh my god, it's so good. Batman's Grave by Warren Ellis has actually been pretty good so far. I think that's the second issue of that. That's looking pretty good. And my major one is definitely Flash. I've seen some people talking about it both in the live chat and in our private chat that Josh Williamson is not getting enough credit for the work he's doing on the Flash title right now. He stumbled a little bit after Flash War, but I think some of that was because he had to work off the clock with them just deciding to off Wally. But his Flash title has been absolutely awesome the whole time in Rebirth. I think 82 is the issue they're up to now, and it's just been really good. Hawkman's coming out. That's always good, even with this Year of the Villain crap they're doing with it. And I think Justice League Odyssey is really good. I like what they're doing with Jessica Cruz, so that's another one. All my recommendations are DC. I only read DC. Batman's Grave, Batman and the Outsiders, Flash, Hawkman, and what's the last one? The Tales from the Dark Multiverse. I actually like those. I will defend metal as an event to the end. I will die on that hill. But yeah, I think all of those stories have been pretty good so far, and they're like providing these dark, worst possible outcomes to big DC events like Nightfall, Death of Superman, Blackest Night's the one that's out this week. So I haven't read any of those books yet, but that's what I would definitely recommend.
So I will be reviewing Blackest Night on the channel, and I can tell you right now, of the three Tales from Dark Multiverse, it's the first one that feels like a direct continuation of the original story. I'll put that one out there. And that should be out on Sunday. Dylan, what are you recommending this week?
For this week, I'd say Detective Comics is really good. What happened? There's some twists and turns in there, and there's also some rectifying some things. I know not most people are okay with it, but I know some people thought what Mr. Freeze was doing was a little out of character, but it was explained in this one. It really explains why he was doing what he was doing and rectifies some things. And the ending of it was great. That final page has me so excited. I won't spoil it, but has me so excited for the next issue. Gideon Falls also had a big issue that explains some things, and it's probably the prettiest book out there right now. Like, there's some pages that are just so trippy and great. And if anyone's looking for a good horror indie book, definitely check out Gideon Falls. And then also, Brian Azzarello's Lex Luthor story just got reprinted as a Black Label edition, and it's like super cheap right now. I think it's $10 on Amazon. So if you never read that, it is my favorite villain book of all time. It is so good, and I think it's the best thing Azzarello's ever done. So if you never, I would say so, yes. Ooh. But I'm a Superman fan, so a little bit of bias there, but I enjoyed it. But and it's Lee Biermo on the art, so it's gorgeous, and it's such a good book. It does a great job at framing how Luthor sees Superman as this sort of monster, like from his perspective. And if you missed the boat on that, definitely go check it out now. It's super cheap, and it's definitely worth the read.
Awesome. So in the chats, Chase is also recommending Detective Comics, Ghost Rider, and White Knight and Spawn. I agree on all those great books. And Black Cat is recommending Batman and the Outsiders, JLO, JLD, JL, and Detective Comics, and then Invaders from Marvel. Oh man, Invaders is such an underappreciated comic. It sucks it's been canceled. All right, I think I caught them all up. Pele, the Elder States of the Aficionados. What do you recommend in the shop this week?
The shop recommendation this week was X-Men #2, and for good reason. If you're not reading that, I don't know what to tell you. It's there's some stuff going on, and there's going to be some reveals in the next, I'd say, 4 or 5 issues. By the time issue 5 comes around, I think a lot of people's perspectives of the X-Men going forward are going to be completely changed, and there's going to be some really earth-shattering crap. The stuff's about to hit the fans. I'll put it that way. That's the shop's recommendation. Guardians of the Galaxy #11. If you love Rocket Raccoon and you've had any love for the Guardians in the past, you should read this. It's really something. I really like what Donny Cates has done with the Guardians. Fallen Angels #1, also another good selection this week. And going forward, Spawn. Keep reading Spawn. If you haven't bought Spawn, go back and get Spawn. I think it's probably going to be one of the better ongoing indie series out there, and Gideon Falls too. I can't really express quite so eloquently as Dylan the just macabre beauty of some of the drawn page in Gideon Falls. It is really something and very impressive. I think that the story is better. The story takes a back seat to the art, but that doesn't mean the story is bad. It just means that the art is really that good. Yeah. So if you like horror in any way in your comics, you should be buying Gideon Falls. Go back and get the old back issues of Gideon Falls and enjoy those, and sit back and watch them appreciate and value, because this is going to be a long-term buy. Yeah. So anyway, that's my suggestions for the week.
All right. A lot of people covered the really good stuff, but one of the real gems out there from, I believe it's Boom Studios, is Folklords #1 from Matt Kent. It's great if you like fantasy stories. It basically sets up a really fun adventure. I'm not quite sure exactly everything that's happening, but it's a really good start. Also, if you like Roy Thomas on Conan, you got to read this Savage Sword of Conan 2-part series, number 10 and number 11. 11 came out this week. It's excellent, and I can't remember the artist. One of his old creative partners back on it. Is a fantastic story. Punisher Soviet was really undervalued, man. That was such a good story. Lots of brutal action in it. If you like Punisher, Garth Ennis back on the title, Punisher Soviet. I believe Jason Burrows is the artist. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about?
Oh, one, I'm going to interject real quick. Usagi Yojimbo for a palate cleanser. It's a special issue this week came out, which reprints the first Usagi Yojimbo story, only he expands on a lot of other things that were going on at the same time. I think it like triples the size of the original story and gives you a lot of details going on in the background. I recommend that one. It's a fantastic read. I really enjoyed it.
Great recommend. I second it.
All right, and also next week, the question, the Deaths of Vic Sage is coming out with Jeff Lemire. We're all big fans of his.
Yes.
And that's going to be excellent. You've got to jump on that one. That is worth the premium cover price for that comic. The art's going to be amazing. It's going to be a great book.
Is that Black Label?
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That's good. I just want the book itself, just physically. I can't wait to see it.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. That will definitely be reviewed right here on Thinking Critical. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you want to be on the conversation, you want to talk about comics, movies, and all that stuff, I do have a Discord server. Everybody that you see on the screen right here is in the Discord server, as well as all the other regulars on Comics Aficionados like Doc, Skip, all those guys. The link is in the video description if you want to come join the fun, talk about comics, movies, whatever. Also, let's talk about where people can find you. Master Chitty, where can people find you on social media, on YouTube?
Oh yeah, on YouTube, I'm Master Chudy on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel. I review comics when I can, and plus branching into like animated movies when I can as well. And on Twitter, you can just follow me, Chudy Obi.
Perfect. Josh, where can people find you on social media?
I don't use much of social media, so I have my YouTube channel here, but I don't upload anything. But I don't use social media, so I'm kind of hard to find.
All right. If you want to find him, you got to come to the Discord server.
Yeah, that'd be a good place.
He's got a lot of stuff to say about comics. All right, who are we on next? Ash, where can people follow you?
Oh, thanks, man. You guys can find me on Ash on Comics. Just do the quick search. It's the simplest way. It should pull me right up. And I just wanted to add real quick. I didn't mention this in my recommendations because the issue hasn't. I only recommend what's just came out or is coming out next week. But I'm about to do a video on Ascender and why you should be reading Ascender. It's by Jeff Lemire. And if you like Jeff Lemire at all, check this book out. If you don't like Jeff Lemire, still check this book out. It's completely won me over to this guy. It's absolutely one of the best books I'm reading right now. I cannot. It's like Hawkman all over again for me. I cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying this book. And so put that on your radar. It's only on 6 issues, so it's easy to catch up. It's a fantastic sci-fi fantasy story in the vein of Star Wars. It's good, and I'm gonna keep an eye out for that video. And you can also find me on Twitter, Ash1138.
Boom. All right, Dylan, where can people find you?
Find me at The Real Comic Book Gamer on YouTube and _RCBG on Twitch and Twitter.
And are you doing the Jedi Fallen Order? What's the game?
Yeah, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm playing through that right now. It's been pretty fun.
So is that only on YouTube, or can they watch you game it live on Twitch as well?
That's only on YouTube for right now.
Boom. You can't play with the game with him quite yet, people. Pele, where can people find you?
You can find me at @just_Pele on Twitters. I tend to get a little bit political on there, but I do discuss comics. And if you got any questions or anything about collectible comics, grades, anything like that, I'm also on the CGC Board of Advisors now. And which means absolutely nothing. I think it just,
I was just about to say congrats.
It's just something I can put on my business card. But anyway, I'm the CGC Board of Advisors now. Ooh, big deal. And you can, but anyway, talk about comics. I'm up for any kind of comic conversation on Twitter, and you can also reach me on Facebook at @just_Pele also, where I post up new acquisitions for the shop as well as new acquisitions, personal collections, stuff like that. But anyway, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us so much. I really appreciate all the super chats. Really appreciate you supporting the channel. Tomorrow, there will be an Adamantium Hour with Doc and my panel of X-Men experts. We're going to talk about Dawn of X Phase 1. We're going to cover all the #1 issues, things we like, things we didn't like, cover the art and all that stuff. Also, very shortly, I will have a video with my good friend Dylan right here, where we're talking about Robert Venditti's Justice League. And I'm going to have another video with my good friend Ash right here, where we're talking about the announcement of Bendis's future plans for Leviathan and how the story doesn't end with the event. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Shout out to Matt Poe. and I'm out.